The reason why people get stuck in messaging and headlines and taglines and copy when they don't have a product is because they're literally trying to describe something that doesn't exist. So better to just spend your time talking about your ideas and helping people, getting people interested in talking to you, then get them on a call and ask them what their problems are and describe how you might be able to help them.
This is On Camera, On Brand, a show for professionals who want to look good on camera, but don't have the time or expertise to turn their office into a Hollywood studio. In each episode, Rob Rusher uncovers how professionals can get the most from their home or office setups. If you invest the time to share your stories on camera, you should be on brand.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On Camera, On Brand. I'm your host, Rob Rusher, and in today's episode, we have Stephen G. Pope from SGP Labs. Now, Stephen has created these amazing database and content systems in Airtable, which allows an individual or a team to go through the entire content process with photos, videos, text, and even posting onto the social media platforms. Now, we dive into that, and then we also talk about how Stephen got into creating this, how he first got on camera. He was losing sleep because he didn't know what to do on camera, and how he got over that and ultimately built his business. There's a ton in here from his community that he started and a lot of great tips. So I hope you get a lot out of it. I certainly did, and I will be re-listening to this and taking notes. So let's dive in and see what Stephen has to say. Because I remember you've even posted, I think that's where I first, actually there's two posts I remember. That's how I found you. One, you were saying something about like, oh, I was on this LinkedIn for a few months and I'm telling my wife I'm doing all these things, but nothing's working. So I wrote a post like my life depended or something. And I was like, oh, okay, that kind of clicked.
Yeah.
And then just the progress. So I mean, I guess we could start even, I'm just curious of like the quick transition. Like obviously you weren't doing content automations before it was needed. So kind of what were you doing for a career before, and then how did everything kind of form?
Yeah, so I grew a software company. So I've been an engineer my whole life, and I had a software agency that I built out, was doing several $1 million a year, and then I ended up selling that. And then I was like starting over from scratch. And I was going to do something again in the technology space, but I really looked around and I was like, how am I going to build that business? Because the way I built the other one was on blogging and just doing good work. And it worked, but it took a while. And I was like, I can't have it take that long to start the next one. Like I want it to be faster. And so I started looking into video and social media, and I saw people like Gary Vee talking about all this stuff. And I didn't really know exactly how it all worked, but I was super excited about it. I got really into marketing. Thought it was really interesting that just by crafting words and saying them in specific ways, and you could basically create value and attract people to you. So I found all that really fascinating. So I just got into it to start that other business. And as I would have lunches with people, I was networking, and I found myself talking more about the video and the marketing and all that. I thought that was so interesting, and getting people charged up about it. And you know, a lot of people were like, they were interested in working with me, and I didn't necessarily have much to offer, but I just kept working through it and just offering people stuff, trying things out. I created this little mastermind. And anyway, I was just creating a lot of video at a certain point, and it was just a pain. So I started bringing in all my technology experience to streamline all that. And then I started talking about that on some of my videos, and a lot of those videos on TikTok went viral, and people were like, oh, can you help me do that? Can you help me do that? And I didn't really have anything at that point, but I just kept refining it and went through a few different iterations to kind of like arrive where I have like a product I can sell. And so that's kind of like the journey of how I got into video itself, and then starting to automate it. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like the initial idea was for you just to create some kind of marketing business, right? And then you saw, were there some key indicators that you're like, oh, this video thing is worth, not only, because what I hear is not only did you invest in that as a tool to use for your clients, but then all of a sudden you're on video now, and you're in front of the camera making these videos that ultimately like drove your business, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I did start getting on video to start a different business. And then I just wasn't that passionate about that business, but I was interested. I've always liked helping entrepreneurs. Even my past business, it was always around helping entrepreneurs build their technology. So I was just like, hey, I'm going to help them build their business. I'm going to help them get over the same things I'm doing here. And it took a little longer than I thought it would, but I think that's normal. But yeah, I mean, it was just going through that process of creating video, getting over the fears, because I used to be terrified of getting on video. Like literally before I did it, like for 2 weeks, I couldn't sleep, and I felt like it was a worthwhile cause to get into. And there's another thing too, is like, because I was afraid of it, I feel like at the core, like personally, I've always felt like I have more to give. I have more impact to make. And like, so I've always been successful, but like I felt like I wasn't really reaching my potential. And I think it was partly through communication that I was lacking something. That was a part of it, right? So it's mixed with other personality traits that were holding me back, but definitely just getting out there, sharing my message. Like people used to ask me like, how did you start this technology company? And I'd be like, oh, I just started it one day. And it wasn't a compelling story, but there was a compelling story there, but I didn't really know how to tell it. I wasn't really that interested in telling it, to be frank, but I've just learned that telling stories and learning how to connect, it's not like telling your story, but like telling someone else's story through your own in a way is a really important thing to marketing.
A very hard thing, but definitely a great thing.
It's hard, especially because people just tell you, hey, you should tell stories. And like, if you don't know what they mean, like you might think it's like a campfire story or something, like you're just supposed to tell. And those could be really boring and drag on and people could like tune out. But like, how do you tell something that like connects with somebody,
Yeah. And then also in a brief way too, and in a way that can be long form and short form.
Yeah, so you end up starting to tell. That's what the thing is. You do need practice. Like I've said the same things I've said to you many times, and I've just like learned how to craft them and tweak them for the moment, and what are the ones that seem to get reactions from people, and where do people kind of glaze over, So
yeah, and I wonder if that comes from confidence too, because I even noticed like as a cinematographer, it's when you first start, when people ask you what do you do, you're like, well, I shoot commercials, like I think ? And then 5-6 years, it's just like, oh, I do this. It's almost again the same message, but you're able to redefine that. Take me back to when you were first getting on camera. Like, do you remember what it was that caused you so much stress about it? And then was there any like key points that helped you like just finally get over that?
Yeah, I think coming up with ideas, like I don't know if this is the same, but I probably came up with too many ideas, and I never went deep enough with one idea and just really like got good at articulating that one point. So I came up with too many ideas, and so that was kind of debilitating. I was also just afraid to get on the camera and look at it and speak confidently. I didn't really know how to deliver the message. So I did end up taking like a video course that I think helped me a lot. I still use a lot of the information I got in that one in my own material. It's like it's core material, just like how do you structure the message, the basic message? In what order do you do it? Because the human brain does accept things. It wants to get things in a specific order for it to keep paying attention. So some of that basic training,
I need to learn more on that because I don't know if you have ADHD at all. I do. I know a lot of creatives do. And that's the toughest part for me is like when I do my first outline, I am all over the place. I don't think anyone, but it took me like realizing that's like, hey, my brain works a little differently. And this is a more effective way to like organize the thoughts.
Yeah. And there's a book, Building a Story Brand. If you've ever heard of that, Donald Miller. It's like
actually, I think I just got that book on Audible.
It's a framework for doing websites and copy and stuff, but like it's the same for a video. It's just like, what's the hook? What's the problem? Can you relate and show authority to be the solution? What is the solution? And then call them to action. It's like real simple formula, but it makes sense, right? Like, why would you listen if it wasn't interesting or it didn't apply to you? Why would you trust this person if they didn't know what the problem was, or if they didn't go through the problem, or if they didn't have some authority behind it? Then and only then are they going to listen to that how-to information. And what I have found is interesting is that the how-to information is sometimes the least important, because like nobody even really wants to do anything. Like most people don't want to create content. They don't want to get on camera. They don't want to do all these things. So they really want to just know that you understand. And like the least amount of information they have to absorb to get the result is what they want, right? So I always laugh sometimes too when people say, hey, I've got this new course. It's got 55 modules in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, that's a lot of modules. Like, can't you just break it down into like one video that's going to save my soul or something,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a tough thing because I did a course on camera basics, which may be similar to the thing you took, where it basically just walks you through how to go from nothing to like setting up and lighting. And like my goal the whole time was like, man, it's got to be like under an hour. And that was hard to do. But I realized I was like, no one's going to, I mean, maybe, but the likelihood of someone being able to invest 3 to 6 hours to be on camera is very minimum, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the job of a course is like, how do you take someone to an end result in the most efficient way possible? So like
Yeah.
we tend to like put in all this stuff and then it actually just prevents them from doing the thing that they wanted.
Yeah, it's almost like over thought and over processed in a way. And you said a great quote just earlier, and you're the second person to say it in almost the same way. Something along the lines of they want to know the least amount to get the results they want. So it's like if you're able to teach them and help them and just get them from point A to point Z with the least amount of baggage, that's a good way to
Yeah,
go
because most
about
people
it.
would rather just like spend the money and just have their problem disappear. So if you're gonna make them do something, make it efficient, you know?
And how long, as a business owner, was that something you realized right away? Like in terms of your business and these content engines, which we'll get into that you're building, like in terms of like the product, did you have that mindset the whole time, or is that something you learned as you went along?
I knew it logically, but I didn't know it practically,
That's a great
right?
answer.
So like people told me that, but you would always overcomplicate it for people. I'm also an engineer, so I tend to be, thorough and detailed. And so a lot of these things I knew logically, but I didn't necessarily know practically. And so even with like my content engine database, the more success I had was when I made it more and more simple.
Well, with that, like what was like the first thing you were kind of building, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
whether it was successful or not, but I'm curious of like what was version one of the business?
Version one was, and there's been several versions. Version one was a bunch of people were just interested in it. It wasn't what I was selling, but I was like, hey, I'm just going to throw up what I have right now into a community. And I ran like a couple of TikToks. I did a live show and I got like 100 people into this initial community. And it was like $10 a month or something. And that happened really fast. And so that was like the first time I knew something was pretty interesting about this. But I still stumbled along getting traction. So like, and that was the early time. So like that was, the database looked a lot different. It was just like one table and it had a lot of things that were wrong with it from my perspective. But that was the version one. And yeah, it was just interesting too, because like that was a learning experience as well. It's like when you are doing multiple things at the same time, it's hard to focus on one. And so I was helping people get on camera. I was also helping people do that. And so it was hard to kind of get people what they needed. So like it was interesting to people, but I don't know that, well, there was a few people that always take your stuff and they do something cool with it, but it wasn't where it was today. But that was the first time where I was like, you know what, I could double down and make this better and better and better over time.
And that was for the distribution model, right? Your kind of the content engine that you've built. Is there, and maybe I should have started that before asking, but is there a easy way to explain kind of what that is, or and then we can dive in a few more details as we go along too.
Yeah, at the core of it, it's a content database that organizes and stores and makes the organization of your content very easy by creating folders and linking everything together and making sure that just you can find stuff. That's the key part of it. And then from there, it helps you automate workflow between you and your team and posting and all that stuff. So that's it at the core of it.
And it's based around Airtable. So, I mean, just to give a practical example, I record a 45-minute podcast episode, and then going through this kind of database, I'm able to break that in, even post from there. I saw you've been doing that where you can post directly from Airtable. So clearly version one, we're way beyond version one. How many
Yeah.
years into like kind of building this system are you?
It's probably like doing it seriously, probably about a year and a half. So
You've
I've
come a
been
long
using it.
way in a year and a half, though, because the beginning
Yeah.
was like kind of Google Slides or Google Sheets. Sorry, and now it
Yeah.
seems like it's a very refined packaged product now.
Yeah. And for sure. So I had that community and then I had people booking calls with me and some bigger businesses. And so that's when I just said, I'm going to continue to keep refining this over and over again. But yeah, I mean, it's still at the core. It's an organizational tool and a workflow tool. And then it has all these other cool things that now because you have the organization, because everything's linked, you can do other automations with ChatGPT, and the world is really your oyster if everything is organized and you have links to everything and you have IDs of things, because then you can hook up other stuff. And it is actually kind of funny because Tristan, I know you know Tristan from the Motion Agency.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he made a post back on LinkedIn and he talked about how he used the unique ID for all the content. And I was like, that's very commonplace in engineering and databases, like you have a unique ID. But that was one of the initial points. I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. Like, and that was one of the first things that I did in my databases. I had this unique ID, and that does allow a lot of the workflow automation to take place.
If someone is creating even just their own podcast or starting to get into a business, is trying to get more into content, and you have a marketing team, maybe there's not that many people on the team. If someone was going to try to start this, do you have any recommendations on where you could start? Is it just jumping into Airtable and taking tutorials, or what would you suggest?
I think it does kind of come down to like your current pain point. So it kind of depends on who you are. Like if you can make money from video without doing all of this. So it kind of depends on like your situation. But like if you're doing a podcast, you're creating a lot of clips and it's just an organizational pain and it's taking a lot of your time. The easiest place you can start is just having an Airtable database that has a row for each piece of content, and it's creating the folders for you and just helping you stay organized. And that's like the core piece. If you have that, everything else is going to be a lot easier as you do all of the other work you have to do.
So how did you learn Airtable? Was that just something you did? Because when I first opened it, I was just like, I don't know if I want to deal with this. And then it took me a little time. And then, they even have built-in automations, which is great. I'll just say it's one of those overwhelming softwares, but clearly you've kind of mastered it.
Well, I do have a technical background. So like databases, all of that stuff is pretty
You speak
nature.
The language.
Yeah. And so all I was looking for is like, how can I get access to a database without having to do a real database like MySQL or Postgres? These are some like back-end technologies that you have to launch and like administer and all. I didn't want to get into all that. Thought it was overkill. So, and I had used Airtable for years before that, just in little ways. So I knew that it would probably do what I needed to do. But I mean, that's really it. It's like, for me, it was pretty easy for the most part.
So it wasn't like you didn't lose sleep each night deciding which platform to build on. You just kind of found Airtable and it checked the boxes.
Yeah, it does exactly what I needed. It's really just like a spreadsheet, like Google Sheets, but it enables automations in a nice way. Like you can automate Google Sheets as well, but it gets kind of hairy, and it's not like really a structured database.
Yeah. Plus, I'm just a big fan of packaging, and I feel like Airtable, you can see different views. You can see exactly what you want, what you don't want. I like that a lot. And
there's one I've been eyeing. It's called Smart Suite.
Smart Suite. Okay.
It's like they're like basically a direct competitor to Airtable. They haven't been around as long as that. That is something I'm starting to kind of like look at. Seems like they've solved a few of the issues that do bother me about Airtable, and it looks a little prettier and more modern. So, but there's a few things that they don't have, so I haven't moved to it yet, but
I'll have to check it out.
That is something I'm looking at.
No, that's cool. That's really cool. So I guess I know a little bit, but I know people listening would be very interested in this. What are some of the like packages you offer? Because so like I said, Airtable, anyone that's been in it, you can get very overwhelmed fast, but you offer consulting, then you also offer kind of like a done for you package, right?
I technically do, but I don't offer it that much. But the main package that I've been selling right now is called the Content Engine Database, and it's a course plus support, and it just walks you through how do you set up the Airtable database from beginning to end. Like how do you hook up the Zaps, how do you hook up Frame.io, which is an editing, like a collaboration software for video editors. How do you hook all these things up, and then how do you use it? How do you hook up Slack and get notifications to your team and all that stuff? And it just walks you through it. And then I've got videos that help you set up your own workflows and think it through. And, people are always coming back and saying, how do I do this? How do I do that? So I just keep adding more videos. And I have set it up for people in the past. What I have noticed, though, is that when you go through the installation process, it gives you exposure to Airtable and Zapier and all those different things. And I think that might be an important part of running a system like this. So I've only done that one time. Well, I've done that other times. And like, to be honest, there were issues with it because people just weren't as intimate with how it worked. But that's the main way I've been selling it. I have some ideas in the future of where it might go, because I'm actually working on this. I haven't like shown people it, but I have another database that's like crazy. It's like, but it also makes it more complex and harder to use. So,
Yeah.
but here's the interesting thing that I have found though, is that there really are two types of people that are using the system. There's like people that really just want something to make things easier, and they have less technical background. So keeping it simple for them is pretty vital. But then I've had a couple people that come in and like, they take the whole thing and they like transform it into something else, which has been cool to see as well. So I want to make sure I can service the people and maybe even make it easier for the people that just want that easy workflow, but then cater to those other people that are just like uber automation and technology nerds that can absorb all of that super quick and just do something crazy with it.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine too, if you offer like a base starting package, it's very easy to add to that as you learn. But I agree with you. I think going through something and actually building it out, you learn. And then when things, I mean, I always felt like this with like cars and my camera stuff. Like I always want to be the one working on it. I'm not a mechanic, but like I at least wanted to know enough so when something wasn't working, you could fix it or get close, or at least intelligently have some, a conversation to get it fixed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What is like if you don't mind, I'm just curious, like who's using the product? Like, have you seen a type of industry, individual or business or even department that's like using this and it's just like really just excelled things for them or took them to the next level?
Yeah. So there's a lot of people building their personal brand. They're creating content for themselves and they want to be able to do that efficiently. The people that I've noticed that have done it the fastest are people that are already creating a lot of video. And so like one YouTuber who's got like 1.5 million, subscribers, he took it and ate it up and used it real fast. So people that already know video workflow, and then like video agencies. So because like what I've noticed is like with personal brand stuff, it's always something you can do next week. And if you've got to learn a little technology and you're doing, it's like people just kind of put it off. They get it going, but the video agencies have to make it work. So they usually eat it up very quickly and get it going. So the people that are already creating a lot of content tend to be the people that implement it the fastest.
Yeah, or if they're creating content for clients, because that's what I started
Right.
looking into it more and more seriously is once you have a couple projects that all need 4 to 6 outputs from that one video, Google Drive just doesn't work for me anymore. So
It gets nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like, I mean, the main problem you're solving is that for one side would be when people have too many videos, the companies or agencies that have clients that are creating videos all the time. And then it's like, which video got posted last week? Like, when can we repurpose this? And then on top of that, tracking everything. But you do that all in Airtable, even the tracking, right? And analytics.
Everything. Yeah. From beginning to end. Yeah.
Man, gotta get going on that. What's next? I mean, do you just keep hearing what people are struggling with or finding like pain points you can solve with this software, or are you also looking at maybe something away from video distribution?
So kind of what's next? Number one, I want to make sure that people that are buying it get what they want. So I'm continually trying to figure out what video training do I need? How can I make it simple? Those kind of things. And I do have it, like I said, I have another version that I think is really innovative just from like a workflow standpoint, but again, is actually more complex. And so I probably won't sell that one for a while, or I'll only sell it to a select group of people. But then I'm also starting to think, okay, I've really mastered the video workflow. How do I start using ChatGPT to take videos, create text posts, create image posts, also really tightly align like calls to action. So like if you have a podcast like this and you make a bunch of clips from it and you want all of your clips to be linking back to the main episode. So keeping track of that is a pain as well. Like you post your video on LinkedIn and then you go into the comment and you post, hey, if you want to watch the full episode, here's the link, right? So keeping track of all that stuff and aligning all the calls to action back to the main video and making that easy for people like you to keep track of and post. So some of that stuff, like getting into the real nitty gritty weeds of the marketing and making that effective. Because like the more you can like actually get people back to like your main thing, a lot of the effective marketing comes from is like actually keeping track of all this stuff and pulling it together.
Yeah, and I feel like with shorts that can be hard, and it almost seems like there's this trend that I see some people discussing of like to not blatantly do a call to action on shorts, like just have the information. And it seems like you have a mix, because I've watched plenty of your videos, and I mean, I guess it does work, because if you say something that really hits or that I'm focused on, no matter what, I'll find more of
Right.
that video clip. I'll just Google you real quick, go on your YouTube and find it more. So yeah, I wonder, are you playing with a mix of like call to action and no call to action?
I tend not to do too many call to actions in the actual video itself, because I think people will get people get annoyed with that kind of stuff. I've noticed that there's two types of marketing out there. There's one where it's like you're trying to sell directly to people that are in pain right now. And that's where people tend to do that, right? That's like, you need clients right now. So if you want more clients, go to my link. You want more clients. It's just like this constant barrage of like hitting that pain point. And I don't know, like I find it better to talk more about results and conveying information rather than just like that pain point marketing. Because I feel like that's kind of preying. These are subjective decisions you have to make for yourself in your own marketing. But I just feel like it's kind of preying on vulnerabilities versus like really trying to, establish yourself in a marketplace and become an expert at something. I have found that if you repeat the same messages over and over again, so I talk about making good video, automating the workflow, and building teams around all that. And so like I can just own that little niche and kind of carve something out. And I feel like I have kind of like, I've started to do that. Like there's nobody that kind of does that I have seen.
And it's nice, because I feel like you've also almost built a natural funnel, like a sales funnel in a way, where it's like in the beginning, all you want to do is figure out this system, right? If you're creating content already, cool, now I'm going to build this system. And then it's like, okay, how do I scale that up? And then at the end, it's like, how do I build a team around this so I can continue scaling? Was that always the idea, or did that kind of form as you were building?
It wasn't, no. Like I've envisioned this a million different ways, but it was only until I was able to do it myself and really see it in my own brain and actually apply it that I could then give that level of direction to someone else, right? So I've had that vision, and it's come out in so many different ways, but it's only recently where I've really learned how to articulate it that way. And it's also kind of sometimes counterintuitive, right? Because I'm always talking about scaling content and automations and stuff. But when people come to me and they want that and they're not even creating content, I have to be like, look, like that's going to be a real distraction right now from you just like getting on camera and delivering a smart message.
Yeah.
So like, and sometimes people will like, they'll even call me out on my own content. They'll be like, quality over quantity. And I'm like, yeah, well, check out my other videos where I talk about that. Like I have multiple interests, and this one video isn't the sum of everything that I talk about.
Yeah. And it's all, I mean, I think the answer is kind of both, of that quality versus quantity, because I'm a true believer, and I've just seen it in any other social platform, especially in like agency and the consumer world, is like, cool, video's great. If you jump on video to the platform that just offered video and you're doing video early, you'll get ahead. However, everyone and their mother has a camera, an iPhone that can shoot good video. So it's like there comes a point where just doing, your webcam and your laptop speakers microphone is not great. I mean, obviously it's not like you're in a huge studio, but you have a nice microphone. I can hear you clearly. All your videos are sharp. I can see you. You're lit.
Right. And then it's all like order of priorities. So you have to be able to say something. I always say this too. It's like, hey, if you can go out over on the weekend and just buy all the best stuff and set it up and not get overwhelmed and make it take a month and a half, then go do it. But if you can't, and if that's going to get in your way, then just practice getting on camera, use your webcam, use your phone, get the stuff out there, and then you can incrementally improve that stuff. Same with hashtags and posting times. None of that matters until you're on the camera and doing these different things. But of course they matter. Like the more professional you look, the better the camera looks, the more professional you're going to look. And you mix that with a good message, and all of a sudden these things are going to really compound, right? Yeah. It's just order of operations.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, it's, I feel the podcast I have has good content and people enjoy it. But I also know that the way I was able to get so many guests, especially early on, is because I was sending them videos that looked, very professional and well lit. So at least they knew, like, oh, okay, this podcast at least is going to look and sound good.
Well, yeah, I guess context is important too, right? So if you're launching a podcast and you want high profile guests to come, well, then, maybe the audio and the video is more important up front, right? Everyone wants like the ultimate blueprint. It's going to depend a little bit on your situation, right? So,
Yeah. And
but
the
like
reality is you can't do everything at once, right? You can't build four things and try to level up everything all in the same
unless
day.
you've just got like hundreds of thousands of dollars and you can just hire the expert to do it.
Very true. Very true.
So some people
For
can
the
do that.
majority. For the
Right.
majority.
Right.
In terms of like the time it takes maybe to learn your systems through your programs, like how long do, let's say, the solopreneurs, the single person that is taking it seriously, they know enough to get going, how long does it take them to kind of build this system?
You mean in terms of like the Airtable
The
thing?
database, yeah, the Airtable
Yeah.
database. Sorry if I'm jumping around a little bit on that.
Let me try to answer that in a couple ways. Like not too
Okay.
many people, not too many solopreneurs buy the Airtable database, mostly just because I shy them away from it. Because if you're not doing video, again, it's a distraction. But if they buy that system, some people get it up in a couple of days and they're using it. Other people take a couple of weeks because they're just kind of playing around with it here and there in between all the other things that they're doing. And then in terms of like people, so I have another program called Content Accelerator, which is getting you on video and helping you build out the sales funnel. I've had people just like literally get up, just start recording videos. They probably didn't even absorb a ton of my information. It was more just that we got them going. And then they had like 100,000 followers on TikTok in a few weeks. And then other people take a lot longer, like they agonize over the different things.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to dial in on what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Time, fear, just not a priority. Doing too many different things. It's really hard to kind of like doing content is hard. So I think some people just get stuck in their other life and the fears and to get going quickly.
Yeah. So for the solopreneurs, keeping that example, so that's the database module, right? Sorry, I get the two names confused.
Well, yeah. So
the one is just to help you get on camera, right, and get you creating content, and you build like a basic Airtable with that system.
Yeah. So there is a basic one in there. Yeah.
Okay.
But even that is at the bottom of the list of things to do.
Gotcha.
So,
It's more about getting on camera, creating that content. So when did you start seeing like, man, the value beyond everything? Because it sounds like to you, you're saying one of the most important things is just start creating the video content and getting on camera. Is that from because you saw yourself do that, or?
Yeah. And I've always been shifting the order around to kind of like get people going. Like sometimes people need that system to like, oh, I can't do this unless I have this and this and this. So like I'll cater to that and say, okay, well, get it set up real quick, do it. But yeah, the most important thing is like, can you make a video that generates money? And so for that, you really only need a phone. You don't even need a video editor. Technically, you could just edit it there. And you need some way to capture that person and talk to them on a call. So that scenario can be quite simple, right? And the faster you just put that together and start talking to the camera and getting people on the phone with you, the faster you're going to make money. So simplifying that process is the key, right? Because I think what might happen is people will overcomplicate that process and make it hard for people to book calls with you. And it could be for any number of different reasons. It's like a self-sabotage. It keeps you from actually getting on camera, right? You got to create this complex way for people to contact you, have to jump through all these hoops. And who's going to do it? Nobody, right? Like think about when you want to talk to somebody, you want it to be super simple. You just want to like click a link and, and like people want to build their website. It's like, you don't need it. You don't need a website. Like that's not even needed anymore. I mean, you might have one eventually, but like you don't need it to make money.
Or you don't need, someone once told me, you don't need a great website until you need a great website. Just meaning it's just like, if you need something to show your work, put it up there. But you don't need to have that take time away from doing the main thing.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, because if you like, here's the thing: if you don't really know what your product really is yet, like you're still figuring it out, the website is going to be this huge time suck because you're going to spend all of this time like on describing what the product is. And the reason why people get stuck in messaging and headlines and taglines and copy when they don't have a product is because they're literally trying to describe something that doesn't exist. So better to just spend your time talking about your ideas and helping people, getting people interested in talking to you, then get them on a call and ask them what their problems are and describe how you might be able to help them. That's a much more efficient way of like going about it versus trying to create a website for an imaginary product. Like that's no wonder it takes you so long to build it. And no wonder when someone goes to your website, they have no idea what you do because you don't know yourself. And so just be honest about it and just go straight to the marketplace and try to craft something live.
Yeah, kind of the build in public mentality.
It works really, really well, but it's just a mind shift that people have to go through because you feel pretty exposed.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it wasn't like I feel like it took me too long to get started just producing more videos and getting out there. And I think mine was more of a mix of overthinking it. I thought it had to be like this Hollywood movie. And then it was just, I don't know what it was in my head, but just my career as a freelancer, just like, wait, I'm going to do all this and I'm not getting paid yet? Like, I'm doing all these video work and like, what do I get from it?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is a shift. Like you do a lot of like upfront publication and maybe nothing happens. So that's kind of like an interesting process to go through. And I think
but the
that's
key is it does happen, you know?
It does.
And what I found is nothing will happen until you do that.
That's the trick. Yeah. It's like, cause when you start putting out so when I started putting out a lot of videos, I was getting business and I was growing, but it wasn't until I really nailed my messaging and what people really wanted. And it's an important lesson. Like, so when I started showing my systems, the Airtable database and like little, frameworks I had for creating videos and stuff, that's when people would call me and be like, hey, I've seen a lot of people that say they help you grow on TikTok and all these things, but I saw your system and that's what made me book the call. And then literally like over and over and over again, I saw your system. That's why I booked. I saw your system. And so then that was like a eye-opening moment. Wow. It's like, okay, like whether people need it or not, they think they need it. And so that becomes forefront in the marketing. And then but then I had to go even deeper, right? So when they said system, I imagined, to me, that meant something specific. But to them, what the system was different. For each person, it was different. So for some people, it was, how do you write a script? What's the system for writing a script? What's the system for getting my equipment set up? What's the system for this, and this? And so I had to fumble around like a little bit, like knowing what that system meant to them. And then I got the aha moment. It's like, I better ask, like, hey, I know you want my system, but when you say system, what does that mean to you? And then they would tell me, and then I could then further make the product better, right? But you couldn't figure any of that out with just without pushing stuff out, having the conversations, refining it, going deeper on what these mean. And then when you have a product, the taglines and the copy, they write themselves. You're just literally describing exactly what it does. You're not trying to do clever stuff and make it fancy or have these big claims of results. Like, I'll help you make $100,000 in the next 3 days. You don't need any of that if you're just clearly describing what people are actually looking for.
Yeah. And I know we're coming close to time, but I do want to quickly just pause and reiterate what you just said, because for me personally, this is like something for some reason took me almost this whole year to kind of like focus on, but reach out to people. Like, I don't know why I was so worried to like reach out to people, even friends, people I've known for years, and not, again, I'm not even coming to sell anything, more just saying like, hey, I have these skills, you do this, like, what don't you like about the video process? Like, what are you struggling with? What's keeping you from on camera? And it's like, I mean, I'm going to continue doing that. And I know I messaged you about that earlier in your group, but it was just like, why didn't I start this sooner? It's like, I don't know if I was just afraid because I felt like I was selling, but once I did it, kind of like being on camera, I guess, it just got easier. And again, I kind of refined my message and almost got to the point quicker. And
Right.
so, yeah, I just want to highlight that because that's such an interesting point. It's like, it sounds like almost to wrap this up is like you first just have to start doing, just start creating, have an idea, and just be okay with it if it sucks. And then refine that. And then at some point, you have to then ask people, like, would you either, is this something you would buy? Does this solve your problems? Or like me, it's kind of like, hey, I can do a lot, but like, what are you struggling with the most? And then I can see what can I do to create something to solve that problem for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like, to your point, I think it's like, it's making sales not feel like sales. Like, you're just like, hey, and so like if you're really early, you can just reach out to people and say, hey, I know you're an expert in your space. Like, I'm building out a product. I would love just to, get your feedback. And through the process of that, I think I could probably like give you a couple of cool insights that would be valuable to you in that process. And usually, like, I mean, not everyone, but like I call them early adopters, people that are passionate about being entrepreneurs and helping people. Those people will respond to you. And then during that conversation, if you're just like kind of digging in and asking them questions that they care about, then it's quite easy to pivot into your product. And in fact, they'll most likely, after the questions will take their course. Like, it's like when the questions will eventually, that person will be like, oh, this person is interested in me. And now I'm curious about what they actually offer. And they might even ask you, well, tell me more about what you do. And then all you do is you just tailor all the things you do to specifically the things they ask instead of going off on a rambling mess,
Yeah. That's super smart stuff. We could do this podcast. We might have to have you back on another time because this is some
man.
gold at the end. Yeah, for sure. Where can people go to find more about the programs you offer, your stuff, your videos? LinkedIn, I'm guessing, is that your most active channel?
My most active is TikTok and YouTube. But if you go to Google and you type Steven with a PH, GPOPE, it's going to bring up all my channels. I think probably the best place to get help is in the community that I launched. If you go to academy.sgplabs.com, it'll take you right there. You don't even have to log in. You can take courses without even logging in, or log in and post what you need. And you can see there's a bunch of free courses in there. We can chat. I can direct you. And that's probably the best place. It's growing, and there's like people, like just today, someone posted a really cool video, and I pinned that to the top. So it's really kind of neat that like other people are contributing, and I think that's actually I want to make a post in the community about this. I think there's an opportunity for people to do business in there as well. Like, you could find clients in there. Like, it's an interesting group of people, and they're all doing different things. So there's video editors in there. There's people like you doing cinematography, and
it's a good group. It's been fun to explore who's there. You could always make. I'm in one group, and they said it perfectly. I love it. They said, "We're not selling, but we're definitely buying." Was kind of like the thread. So it's like you don't need to over promote yourself, but if someone has a problem or wants to team up, we're definitely open to that.
I think when people create these communities, there is an element of commerce going on here. Like, I'm running a business, but so I don't want people to think that they can't come in and do the same thing. Just we all have to do it respectfully, right? So like, I know there's people in there that need all of these different services. So like, how can we just help each other out?
Yeah. I mean, you could even do like a job posting board.
I'm going to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so if people have like, hey, I need an editor, or I need someone else, or full-time, part-time, that could be a cool resource.
That's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to create a thread that's just like, doing business in the community or something. And this is your opportunity to put your pitch.
I like that. No, that's great. I think that's really cool. Well, okay, so for everyone listening, we'll throw the links in the show notes to Steven's Instagram, or I'm sorry, YouTube, TikTok. You said were the most popular. LinkedIn. I'll throw them all in there because
Sure.
I mean, I found you through LinkedIn, so I guess that's the power of spreading the videos out on all the networks.
It is, yeah. It is. It does work.
Thank you, Steven, for taking the time, and yeah, we'll definitely have to get you on here again because I think there's more we can discuss.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is fun. I love talking about this stuff, and so anytime, just let me know.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out On Camera, On Brand. This episode is produced by Motion, a podcast agency that helps B2B organizations create their own shows. If you enjoyed what you learned, check out more episodes at motionagency.io/oncameraonbrand.